I can't believe it's already November. I really wanted to do an October video with some Halloween theming, but I was never able to get around to it. I'll just have the Halloween themed videos now in November, in a new segment I'm going to call Halloween in November. So get ready for some spooky pre-reviews. That's right. This is the series in which I'm going to be focusing on Final Fantasy XV and Kingdom Hearts 3. This video is part 1, and we'll be focusing on Final Fantasy XV. So sit back, relax, and get ready for some Final Fantasy XV/Versus 101. While doing research for this pre-review, I decided to check out Square Enix's stock. Studying a company's financial strength can give clues to the quality of their forthcoming projects. If the stocks are high, the company morale is good, and that in turn ensures a superior product or service. Sometimes, though, a steady stock can make a company too confident, and the resulting product is mediocre. A similar occurrence could happen with struggling companies, too. If numbers are low, they can either strive to produce quality, or they can lose incentive. It's a perplexing crossroad which must be traveled down with care to avoid financial and reputational disaster. During the past 3 years, Square Enix's market trend has been a veritable roller coaster of ups and downs, hovering around the 3,000 yen, about $25, mark per stock. Considering that they peaked in 1999 with stocks costing as much as 11,000 yen, $95, Square Enix has definitely seen better days. The company plummeted to 974 yen, about $8 per stock, in April 2013 following a lackluster fiscal year. Now, Marplotic, you may be asking yourself, what does any of this have to do with Final Fantasy XV? I'm not interested in the stock market. The ebb and flow of their stock seems to be a fitting analogy for the long, arduous road of Final Fantasy XV. To understand the game, we must understand the company's history. Founded in 1983, Square Company, as it was known at the time, was the computer game software division of Daenyusha Electric. In December 1985, Square released its first Nintendo Famicom game, a port of the PC shooter Thexter. In September 1986, Square spun off from Daenyusha and became an independent company. Square began making titles for the Nintendo Famicom, but after a string of unsuccessful games hit the market, the fledgling company found itself on the verge of bankruptcy after only 1 year. As a last bet, Square developed a fantasy role-playing adventure inspired by rival company Enix's Dragon Quest. This game would be Square's last hope, their swan song, their Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy was a runaway hit, selling around 400,000 copies in Japan on initial release and 700,000 in North America. It was praised by critics and consumers, and it pulled Square out of bankruptcy's maw. Striking while the iron was hot, Square released a sequel to Final Fantasy in 1988, which was also met with critical and commercial praise. Since 1990, 12 numbered titles of the franchise, and around 76 spin-off games, have been released. It's one of the most successful and influential video game series ever, having sold over 120 million copies. Yet, despite all the impressive figures and adventures, the question on Final Fantasy enthusiast minds is, whatever happened to Final Fantasy Versus XIII? We must travel back to 2006 to answer that burning conundrum, so follow me to the time machine. During E3 2006, Square Enix, Square had merged with Enix in 2003, announced 3 new titles for the Final Fantasy franchise. Final Fantasy XIII for PlayStation 3, Final Fantasy XIII Agito for mobile, and Final Fantasy Versus XIII for PlayStation 3, which was introduced to the world with a teaser trailer. The narrative focused on Prince Noctis Lucius Kylum battling a barrage of heavily armed soldiers, his only weapon being those he summoned out of thin air. Kingdom Hearts Xemnas came to my mind when I saw it. Noctis was a Sasuke doppelganger, from his emo hairstyle to his blood-red irises. With his calm, bad boy demeanor, Noctis already felt like a natural in Square Enix's lineup of Final Fantasy male heroes. The trio was part of the Fabula Nova Crystallis arc. While the characters and worlds aren't outwardly connected, the factor that ties them together is that it revolves around the mythos of crystals being linked to deities. Versus was to be developed by Square Enix's Development Team 1, the same group behind Kingdom Hearts, with Tetsuya Nomura in charge of directing, character design, concept, and base story, Kazushige Nojima responsible for the screenplay, and the Final Fantasy VII Advent Children crew handling the pre-rendered movies. The game was destined to be a hit. It was said to be, quote, not merely a sequel to 13, but a wholly independent story, unfolding in a different world with different characters, unquote. A few people questioned why it simply wasn't going to be a main number title, being as it had little to do with 13's narrative. Both Nomura and producer Yoshinori Kitase explained that Versus was unsuitable to be a main game. Nomura expounded by saying, quote, it's a type of adventure that we couldn't do in the numbered series, unquote. Before Square Enix could make any of these games, they had to have a proper development engine. Final Fantasy XIII was to be Square Enix's first PlayStation 3 game, but the current White engine was proving tricky to manage. So, with a little modification, White engine became Crystal Tools, named in honor of the crystal elements in the Fabula Nova Crystallis series. Sadly, Crystal Tools would only be used for 5 games: 13, 13-2, Lightning Returns, 14, and Versus. On September 22, 2006, the gaming world came to a collective standstill with the release of the extended Versus trailer. The trailer became an instant hot topic, and fans eagerly counted down the months until Versus's arrival. It was reported as being a PlayStation 3 exclusive. Nomura even shared that the game would incorporate unique 6-axis control features, further cementing the claim that the title would only work on PlayStation 3. Naturally, this drove up the sales of PlayStation 3s, as people who had not yet purchased the consoles prepared themselves for the game's release. But then, something started happening. At the time, nearly a decade ago, the details were insignificant trifles, but armed with what we know now about the game's fate, these signs indicated the beginning of the end for Versus. In May of 2007, when asked by the game magazine Dengeki about Versus's status, Nomura stated that since he preferred working on one project at a time, he had put Versus on hold, and was instead focusing on Monotone, a mobile game available on the Docomo cellular network in Japan. It seems like an odd priority for Nomura to halt production on a headliner game like Versus for a mobile app, and hindsight agrees 100%. With the publicity Square Enix was pouring into the Fabula Nova Crystallis trinity, it seemed only logical that the company gave those games, especially the fan-favorite Versus, precedence. But lo and behold, trouble was brewing inside Square Enix. He admitted that he wanted to hold off on Versus due to the setbacks experienced on Crystal Tools for game development. But to assure people that all was fine in the world of Lucius, info at the PlayStation Premiere press conference in July of 2007 revealed that Versus was already a whopping 1.3% complete. Only 1.3%? 1 year after the game's reveal, at that speedy rate, the game would be completed in 77 years, I thought when I heard the news. 2007's Tokyo Game Show introduced yet another Versus trailer. Again, when interviewed by Famitsu magazine about the trailer, Nomura said the footage was written expressly for the PlayStation 3. Fast forward to June 2008, the 2-year anniversary since Versus's announcement at E3 2006. Famitsu magazine reported an interview with Nomura stating that Versus was again on hold. The entire Versus team was ordered to drop their work and instead help the 13 crew finish their title. Square Enix quickly debunked the quote and attributed it to a mistranslation, but the damage had already been done. Quicker than the spell haste, whispers began traveling around the rumor mill, as many people believed Nomura's statement was genuine. At Square Enix's DKS 3713 event in August of 2008, we got the longest, most comprehensive Versus trailer to date. We saw Noctis's, at the time, unnamed buddies, longer fight scenes, a mysterious man wearing white, sweeping landscapes, our first glimpse of Stella, and the car. The 5-minute trailer, like clockwork, reminded the audience that it was a PlayStation 3 exclusive. The following day, a documentary was shown to attendees that included early development footage and real-time lighting effects of Versus, all the while assuring people the images shown were in-engine in real time and not pre-rendered CGI. It then switched to the developers discussing the game and dismissing the online rumors of it being fake. 2009 seemed to start with a bang for Versus enthusiasts. Square Enix launched a Versus teaser website on January 9th, 2009. Overshadowing the website was the 4-minute and 48-second trailer included on the Advent Children Complete DVD on April 16th, 2009. It was a compilation of the DKS 3717-2008 trailer and a new, silent tete-a-tete between Noctis and the mystery woman Stella. During the scene, Stella shared a legend with Noctis from her homeland of Tenebrae. She explains that people who endure near-death experiences are bestowed supernatural powers by the goddess Etro. The powers include communication with the gods and the ability to foresee death. We also learned that both Stella and Noctis had this ability. The fan reaction was expected, and Versus discussion and screen caps flooded social media sites. Even though the game was absent from E3 that year, Nomura excited fans at Tokyo Game Show with gameplay footage of Noctis running around different environments. Nomura admitted that the clip's purpose was to prove that the game was still in development. Yoshihisa Hashimoto, who had led Team Sonic and worked on the Hedgehog engine at Sega, joined Square Enix in 2009 and became their chief technology officer. December 2009 saw the release of Final Fantasy XIII. The reviews were mixed in regards to story and gameplay, and the game undersold in Japan. The hype that had surrounded 13 quickly found itself extinguished, and focus now turned fully to Versus. In February 2010, Nomura informed fans via Famitsu magazine that Versus would not show at E3 2010 due to changes in the game's world maps. Finally, in August 2010, Final Fantasy XIII producer Yoshinori Kitase hinted at a possible release year. He said the game might not be out in 2011, leaving many to speculate a 2012 release year. At Tokyo Game Show 2010, the gameplay trailer debuted. Gone was Noctis' Sasuke/Neku large collar shirt originally fashioned by Nomura, replaced instead with threads designed by Himuro Takara, the creative director at Rowan, a high-end Japanese fashion line. It was announced on September 21st that Square Enix would hold a Fabula Nova Crystallis event on January 11th, 2011, where more info regarding Versus would be revealed. Come 2011, and it was announced that the Fabula Nova Crystallis event had been pushed out 1 week. When it commenced on January 19th, Square Enix showed the most famous trailer of the game. You know which one I'm talking about. Noctis wakes up in the car, talks to the voiceless Stella again, the city of Insomnia is shown under attack by the Niflheim soldiers and a behemoth, with accompanying gameplay, Noctis' encounter with the Dragoon Woman, which I believe was Stella, and the King facing off against the Man in White. And still, PlayStation 3 was shown as the exclusive console. The trailer was beautiful, and the pre-rendered shots stole the show. From the trailer, we learned that Niflheim had systematically stolen the protective crystals in the surrounding kingdoms. and the final crystal lay in Lucius's crown city of Insomnia. Even though the trailer had been eye candy, fans wanted to hear the promised news that had been hinted at for months. What they got was pure frustration. Agito's name was changing to Type 0, and a sequel for 13, 13-2, was getting a scheduled release of 2011 or 2012. Fans were livid. Even though Versus had been announced at the same time as 13, it was pushed aside so a sequel to 13 could be made first. And the news we've been waiting for about Versus? The release window was still unknown. To make matters worse, Nomura told people on January 25th that no one should expect Versus anytime in 2011 because Type 0 and 13-2 were the only Fabula Nova Crystallis games releasing that year. He said everyone should forget about Versus for the time being. Versus was a no-show at both E3 2011 and Tokyo Game Show 2011. The news just kept looking drearier for the game. Nomura said it hadn't yet entered full production because they were, quote, still taking on so many new developmental challenges, unquote. He then finished by saying that the next announcement he'd make about Versus would contain good information.